Hi everyone, EG Spirit here. So today I'm going to talk about an experience I had in 2013 where I was very close to death and yet was very zen, very calm about it. And I'm going to talk about how that was very unusual to me at the time and still is, and explain not only what happened, but explained, what kind of my takeaway from it all was. So if you've watched this channel for a while or you've watched my Elder Gal channel, you know that when I was a baby, I actually did die when I was around a year old, and I was resuscitated and brought back. I don't know how long I coded, or I have no idea, but I have no memory of it. I don't have a memory of a near-death experience, but that was definitely the closest I've come to death because, of course, I technically did die and then they brought me back. So, but there's been a couple of other times in my life where I was very close to death, and one of them was when I was in Africa in the Peace Corps when I was 22, and I almost died of cholera. And then the most recent experience I had was in 2013. And, like many things in life, it was unexpected, came out of the blue. And but what was most surprising was my reaction to it. So I'll describe to you what happened, and then I'll tell you about my interesting reaction to it. So in 2013, in May of 2013, it was right at the end of a school year, and I was teaching at the community college at that time. And thank goodness it hit right after I gave out my last exam because, it hit really hard. So what happened was, unbeknownst to me, I had a gallbladder problem that had probably been brewing for, maybe a few years. I don't think it had been that problematic for that long because I remember I'd had a ultrasound of my gallbladder maybe about 6 years before this happened, and my gallbladder didn't have any stones in it. It was clear, no problems. So something must have developed between then and 2013. Well, I'd had a couple of warning episodes, which I didn't know were warning episodes, where in the few months before I actually had this attack, I had weird things, like I would wake up. It only happened, I think, twice, where I was awakened during the night by pain in my back, and significant enough to wake me up. And it wasn't like pain in the front or my stomach or, and it was kind of this aching, really pain, but it was really intense aching. And the weird thing is, both the times I had that in the 6 months prior to this major attack, when I got up and walked around, the pain went away. And then I went back to bed, and then it didn't happen again for several months. And then even when I had the attack in May of 2013, I don't think I'd had an attack for 2-3 months before that. And I didn't know it was gallbladder at all because I just thought maybe it was like a muscle thing when I was sleeping and somehow when I got up and moved around. But apparently what it was is there was a gallstone that was stuck, and then when I got up and moved around, it like popped out or something, and so then I felt fine. Well, so in May what happened is I also went to bed and I woke up and I had this pain, but it didn't go away. I got up and walked around, it didn't go away. And my first thought was that I was having a heart attack because, in women, they tell you that often it manifests as like back pain instead of like at your heart or left side or whatever. So I took my blood pressure, it was elevated. I remember feeling like, and this was like, I don't know, 2 in the morning, 1 in the morning, something like that. And I decided to drive myself to the emergency room because I thought, well, I don't want to take a risk that it's a heart attack. Well, when I got to the emergency room, they checked me out and they ruled out a heart attack. And they basically did, they did a blood test and they suspected it was gallbladder, and sure enough it was. And they actually did maybe they didn't do a CT scan yet of my gallbladder. I think they just based it on the lab results. But anyway, they told me it was a gallbladder attack. And by the time I got in there, it was already like better. It wasn't as bad. And they said, you know, it's going to be problematic for a while, but it's nothing emergent that you need to have taken out right away. And, but very wisely, the doctor told me to watch out for certain symptoms. He said, if you start throwing up, then that's a warning sign. He didn't tell me a warning sign of what, but he said, you start throwing up, you know, you should come in here. If your urine turns dark, you should come in here. And I think there was one other symptom. I don't remember exactly what it was. I don't know if it was a fever or not, because I don't really remember having a fever, but he told me, the main thing I remember was vomiting or getting really nauseous and basically, and then having dark urine. So over the next day, I think it was about 24 to 30 hours later, over the next day, I had a lot of pain in my abdomen and stuff, which was weird. And I had another class to teach at the other school I was at, which I taught through the pain. I actually sat down the whole class and taught, even though I was having this weird, it's like I felt like there was like, my intestines were made of glass or something. It was a weird sensation. So, but I wasn't nauseous yet, and I didn't have dark urine yet. And then I went home, and the next morning I woke up, and I wasn't really having any pain, but I felt really sick. And I remember I couldn't eat anything, and I tried to have something, and I threw it up. And then I went to the bathroom, and my urine was brown. And I remembered what he said. And so I said, uh-oh. And I was just feeling really, really weak and really, I wasn't really having pain at that time, but I was just really weak. And somehow I managed, you know, I thought about calling an ambulance, but the hospital was about 3 miles away. It was a pretty easy drive. And I just thought, I just got to drive myself to the hospital. Well, by the time I got to the hospital, I was so weak I could barely walk from the parking space into the emergency room. And I basically hung on to the counter, and I was like, you know, and what the weird thing is, the Zen was already beginning at this point. Like I had been panicked the day before. Like when I first went to the ER, I was real panicked. But by this point, I was not, which was so interesting. I knew I needed to go to the hospital. I didn't know how close I was to death, actually, at that moment. But and I just figured it was my gallbladder just exploding or something. I didn't know what it was. So they got me back right away. They immediately checked my blood, and I was just laying, interestingly, I was in kind of a little private room. It had a door on it and everything. I wasn't just in a place where they have curtains and stuff. And everybody looked really concerned that was buzzing around me, like taking my blood, taking my vitals. And I was feeling increasingly a sense of calm. I knew I was really, really sick, but I just felt this just calm, just this Zen thing. And I had a lot of time to just lay there, and I was just meditating. It was, and just not without thinking like, oh, I should meditate. I was just automatically meditating. Well, at one point, I mean, the nurses looked panicked. They kept coming and doing things and checking things. And the doctor came in and he goes, well, we're going to have to admit you. This is really serious. And he said, I know you were just here like a day or two ago. And he said, but now you have acute pancreatitis. He said your gallbladder apparently popped out a stone and it went in the pancreatic duct, which is apparently not uncommon with gallbladder issues. And he said, so it's stuck there, and now your pancreas is in crisis. And I just said, okay. And he goes, this is really serious, and we're going to have to do surgery, and you know, everything's going to have to move very fast and whatever. And he said, so we're going to try to get you in a room as soon as possible and get everything scheduled. And I said, okay. And he looked at me like he did. I don't think he thought I understood what he was saying, but I did. I knew, I could tell by the look on his face it was serious. And he said to me, he said, I'm just telling you this straight. He goes, you know, you could die. And I went, okay. And I really felt okay about it. I have no other way to describe it as just feeling okay about it. I was just very calm. I wasn't panicked. I felt like, okay, if this is it, this is it. And so anyway, they continued, helping me, and I was very pleasant. I was very nice to everybody. I just, I just felt like, if this is it, then, I just want to savor every moment kind of thing. And so they finally got me up to a room. And what's interesting is when you give off this vibe, this Zen vibe, people want to be around it. Is the only way I can describe it. Because I'd been in hospitals before, and I'd actually never had a really horrible experience in a hospital in my life that I remembered. But I know how hospitals can be. And a lot of times, you have trouble getting the nurse or the doctor, and you have trouble getting help if you need it. And I've heard horror stories from people. And I remember laying there, and I wasn't in any physical pain, but I was, very weak, of course. And I really just, I couldn't do anything, obviously. But the staff just kept hovering. They kept hovering around me, and they kept coming in, and I would just be as nice as I could to them. And then I remember I did go to sleep that night. They couldn't do surgery till the morning, and they were monitoring me, of course, and they came and checked my, I guess for any kind of infection in my blood, that would indicate like sepsis or something. They were checking for that. And fortunately that had not happened. But in the morning I went in for emergency or for surgery, and I just remember even the anesthesiologist, they give you that little talk before you're going in for surgery, where first they tell you what medications they're going to give you, and they ask if you have any preferences or allergies or whatever. And at one point, the anesthesiologist says to me, he goes, this is, major surgery, and this is serious. And he goes, you might not wake up. And I said, that'd be okay. And I wasn't being sarcastic. I mean, I literally just had accepted that this could be it. And I don't know what made me feel like that. It was so interesting because obviously it wasn't it. I survived and I'm still here. But I do remember just having this feeling. And then when I actually did wake up, I was surprised. I was like, wow. And then they came in and talked to me when I was in recovery and said, everything went well. And now we just have to monitor the function of your pancreas for the next couple of days and make sure it's functioning fine and whatever. So I was like, okay. And I was in the hospital for actually a total of 4 nights for this. That's how serious, because you know how they don't keep anybody in hospitals nowadays, even back then in 2013. And I was there for 4 nights because they had to make sure that I wasn't going to develop sepsis and that my pancreas was functioning. And there was, they were checking for a lot of things. But the whole time I was just very calm. It's so strange. I don't remember feeling fear at any moment of that process. And of course they released me, discharged me, and I went home, and it took me about another week. I really mostly just rested. I was supposed to teach summer school in about a week at the one school I was teaching at, and I was able to go and do it, although I had to sit down for the first week of classes. I couldn't be up walking around a lot. And because they just did the surgery with laparoscopy, so I didn't have major incisions or anything like that. Anyway, I recovered fine. Didn't have any problems except just getting my strength back overall, but I was fine. So what was my takeaway from this? My takeaway is that it might have been a gift of some sort to me, to show me that when you're faced with a life-threatening situation like that maybe we all have access to that, our angels, or maybe even it's just our higher self, or maybe it's God, or maybe I don't know what it is. But I do know that there is an energy, there's a force there that can calm us if we just are tapped into it. And somehow I don't know what made me tap into it. I have no idea, but I think it was a gift. I don't think it was me myself that did it. I think it was actually a gift to show me what that could look like. And that when you're facing a life or death struggle, and I seriously could have died from that. You know, if I hadn't gone, if I had even waited 6 hours, that might have, to go to the hospital, it might have made all the difference. Who knows? But I do know that ever since that happened, for some reason, I just have a different attitude about like life-threatening things. So the point is, I don't think any of us want to suffer when we're faced with that, you know, whatever that is, the end of our life. But I just learned from that experience that there is something that can help me get through it in a very calm, and actually it brought out everything good in me. Like I was kind, I was loving to people, I don't know how to explain it. It's just that it brought out all the best of me in that experience, which, you know, it can either do that to people or it can bring out the worst in people, you know, or somewhere in between. But for some reason, I have never forgotten it, and I think maybe that's the reason it happened. So that memory would always be with me. And yeah, do I still get afraid when I get a symptom? Like when I had the high blood pressure, do I still feel fear? Yeah, I wasn't very zen about that because that was something that came out of the blue, was unexpected, and I just thought, you know, I don't want to go yet. Like, you know, so when our fear rises up, then I don't think we can always tap into that as easily. So I'm hoping that I don't always feel such tremendous fear, but I think it will be on a case-by-case basis. Hopefully I will feel whenever it really is my time to go, my wish is that I feel that zen. I felt that May Day in 2013 because that was awesome. That was an awesome, and what's funny is I don't remember, even though I know I experienced discomfort and pain and felt ill and all that, it's not the main thing I remember from it. The main thing I remember is this feeling of calm. So if any of you have ever had an experience like that when you've had a life-threatening illness, let me know in the comments below. I'd really like to hear your story about it. But I wanted to share that because I felt like it might be of help to somebody maybe who is facing something serious. That I think we all can tap into that Zen reaction, that Zen kind of response to it. But I'm not really sure, I can't really tell you how to do it since I don't really understand exactly how it happened to me. But anyway, until next time, be kind. Take care of yourselves. Bye.